Hey, I'm Stephen Scott from Big Mouth Audio. Welcome to the Creative Leaders Podcast. Okay, John, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm only a week back from a holiday, so I'm just about to remember my name and where I work and what I do for a living. It's just slowly coming back.
Nice. Did you go somewhere nice?
Yeah, I went to Menorca, which was a COVID holiday that had been cancelled, and we went back. And I've never been before, and honestly, it's really beautiful. I mean, I've in another life, I was in the military and I travelled around. I was in the Navy and I went to lots of beaches in that job. And I have to say that the beaches in Menorca delivered. They were, there's one beach in particular called San Saura, which is a virgin beach. You can't get to it. There's no services. There's just a guy with a wheelbarrow selling melons and papaya and just this beautiful beach. Absolutely loved it. It was great.
Sounds perfect. Sounds a lot better than what the weather's like here in Glasgow right now. So we were just kind of chatting there before we started recording. So you mentioned there you're in the Navy previously, and now in the kids entertainment industry. Let's kind of jump into it and give us your origin story. Tell us your background and the context.
Well, I mean, it's quite convoluted, isn't it? Yes, I grew up in Plymouth as a young lad. I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to be a graphic artist. My portfolio wasn't good enough, and I got a no from the Plymouth College of Art, which was very close to the Navy Careers Office. So I literally, and I regret doing it, but I actually stuffed my portfolio in a bin by Brettonside bus station and walked down the road to Union Street and walked into the Navy Careers Office and said, what's going on? And they offered me a job as a radio operator in the Navy. And so anything to get out of, small town syndrome. I lived in a little village just outside Plymouth called Plimpton. And I just wanted anything really to get away. So I joined the Navy. I did 8 years, went everywhere, spent some time in Hong Kong before the handover and the Gulf. And an incredible experience. One that I really hated at the time as a young 18-year-old man. Didn't like it at all. But on reflection now that the age that I am, looking back, I go, well, actually, do you know what? That's pretty cool. It was a pretty cool experience to have. I don't know many 19-year-olds who were jumping out of helicopters onto oil tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, like I was, back in the late 80s. And then I went to uni. I wanted to be in media. I went to uni, went to college, and it's just luck, really. I happened to be working with the internet in the very, very sort of mid-90s, 96, 97. So we put the student newspaper online. We messed about with web pages, trying to get Netscape up, all that sort of stuff. Just stupid stuff that, didn't think was going to go anywhere. And then obviously, the internet happened. And I graduated from uni, went to London with about 2 years of experience of building content for the web, which was like, 2 years more experience than anybody else they were interviewing. And they offered me a job as a content editor or producer at Disney, which was, I didn't even know it was a Disney interview. I just thought it was another one of these, recruiter interviews. I've been to so many. I walked into this building, there was a Mickey Mouse in the foyer, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I got offered a job on the spot. And I phoned my dad up and said, should I take this job at Disney? And he was like, are you stupid? I was like, what? He goes, yes, obviously take that job. So that was it, really. Did 6 years there, which was, if you want to understand sort of marketing and entertainment and that whole world, there aren't many better places on the planet to pitch up at and just learn everything about that world and that space. So I did 6 years, and then I left and set up Jollywise in 2006 to pay the mortgage. Really, it was just me and one other girl called Kath at the time, and then the company sort of grew and grew and grew, and we're about 23, 24 people now, and every day's different. Every day's different. I do love it. It's digital is just such a fun space to work in, especially in the kids space, because kids are early adopters, so you're always trying to, like, what's the new thing that kids are into, and how can we be there? How can we be there? How can we know it? How can we learn it? So that when clients come knocking and saying, "Hey, have you heard of this? This new Roblox thing?" You're like, "Oh yeah, we're aware of it. Yeah, we know about it." That's kind of, I think the one thing I would say to anyone listening in terms of like origin stories is, I volunteered for everything as a kid. Anything that was going, I put my hand up for and said, "Yeah, I'll have a go." And I think what happens, I think there's something magical in the universe when you volunteer and put yourself out there for anything. What happens is you end up more often than not finding yourself in the right place at the right time. I think if you just sit there and don't volunteer for anything, don't sort of chuck your hat in the ring, I think life has a sort of a habit of just sort of bypassing you. But if you're sort of there, willing, just things seem to sort of happen. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's a mixture of kind of creating your own luck, but also just putting stuff out there, and the more you put out there, eventually it kind of comes back on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you mentioned there every day is different at Jollywise. So for those who aren't 100% familiar, tell us a little bit about Jollywise as a company, the kind of clients that you serve, and the work that you do.
Sure. So we play at that intersection between sort of family, children, entertainment, and education. That's kind of the place we like to play the most. So we're quite thankful that a lot of the work that we do these days is very sort of purpose driven. The world's changed a lot, and a lot of brands have realized that actually, if they want to kind of resonate with the consumers of today and tomorrow, they need to be demonstrating that actually there's a bit of purpose behind their brand. They're not just about selling the next thing. So that what that's meant is that we've managed to get to work on some really great brands, but do some really, really interesting stuff. So the kind of clients that we work with on a regular basis, we do a lot of work for the BBC. We're on their roster. We're one of a handful of games companies that make content with purpose for those guys. But we also work with Disney, Warner Media, Nickelodeon, Universal, milkshake. I'm just trying to think who else. PBS in the US, and then a whole host of other kind of companies and brands that want to, I guess, tell stories in a maybe slightly different way, interactively or through gaming. I mean, right now, if a cross section of what's going on in the studio at the moment, we're building a game for young children about their feelings for Sesame Street. We're in the middle of building a huge climate campaign for Warner Media, trying to encourage kids to take more. Kids want to be more active in the climate change conversation, so we're building tools to help them to do that. We're working on a new movie for Disney, which is coming out in October, and we're in the middle of building a game all about football for the BBC. That's just off the top of my head.
Amazing. So why children's media? Why that industry? What attracted you to that?
So much fun. It's so much fun. I'm a massive kid. I really haven't grown up. If you ask my wife, actually ask my kids. I just, it's. I don't know if it's like just a flat refusal to want to grow up a little bit, but it's such a serious industry as well as it being so fun. I mean, I can't think of more important things to be doing than kind of encouraging and educating and inspiring the next generation of of human beings. So you get to play in that space all the time, and every day is different. It's one day you're building a game for Paddington Bear that's got to work on a remote control on a Sky TV, and and the next day you're building an app that's trying to encourage kids to take more responsibility for the climate, and then in and around that you're doing all sorts of daft stuff for social media for Disney or whatever. So it beats building pension calculators, or no offense to anyone whose core business is doing that. It's just not us. We have a kind of a vision. One of our visions and values at Jollywise is if we can't find the fun in the work that we're doing, then we won't do it. And we sort of stick to that. If we sit around and we'll go, does this smell and look like fun? And they go, no, it doesn't. We go, well, let's not do it then, because life's too short. It really is too short to be working on just drudging through stuff that you just can't bear.
Yeah, 100%. Is that a core value that you've always had from day one? A lot of people listen to this, might be thinking to themselves, I'd love to get to that position where we can effectively say no to projects that just don't resonate with us. Were you in a position when you started out where you perhaps had to take on projects that weren't fulfilling?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, so when I started in 2006, we would do anything for anyone. I mean, I'm not saying we built websites for arms dealers or tobacconists or anything like that, but there was a kind of we had a talented team of people who had a very, very sort of diverse skill set, so we could do lots of different things. But it made us miserable, and it sort of made us sad. I remember going up to Southampton once on a train, sitting in a client meeting with let's say a financial services company that I won't name, where we were going through a 200 bullet point scope of work, where it was like 12.1.A, user is logged in, 12.1.B, user is logged out. Yeah, and I'm just sitting there looking at the ceiling tiles going, what am I doing here? This just sucks. I hate this. And then, unfortunately, I had a kidney transplant in 2014. I was diagnosed with kidney disease. So I had 2 years of being rather poorly, and then I sort of just dropped off a cliff and I needed a transplant. My wonderful sister gave me a kidney, which obviously I can't. There's just not enough words in the English dictionary to thank her with. But when I came back to work, having had nearly a year out, I just had a complete mindset change. I was just like, actually, I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and I just don't want to be doing this kind of crap. I want to do the stuff that I really enjoyed. And when I was at Disney, I spent almost all my time making content for kids. That's what we did, and I was like, that's what we want to do. So let's just do that. So. And when I say kids, it's not always kids. It can be brands that are family orientated in some way, who have a children's and families kind of play, or so we're working at the moment on a brief from an energy company. They do a lot of, it's all renewable energy from solar. They're coming down next week, and obviously that's not a kids specific brand, but what they're looking at is like, okay, we're going to have a captive audience at our forecourt for 30 minutes to an hour while people charge their car. How can we entertain and educate the young passengers in the vehicle when they're sitting around for an hour? So it's that kind of kids, family, entertainment, that place where we play, it cuts across so many verticals. So yeah, that's kind of, so where I want to take the business is, I would like to do more of that stuff across other verticals, because, the entertainment industry is fun. It really is. But I think there are places that we can play where we can bring that magic and that fun to different sectors, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, there's quite a responsibility there as well, isn't there? Even in the entertainment space, but then if you're talking about different verticals as well, kids and family brands, it is such a fun space to play in, but there's definitely an element of responsibility there as well. We were kind of talking before we started recording about the work that you've done and Jollywise have done when it comes to inclusivity, diversity, and obviously we want to talk about that. So how do you sort of implement that in terms of industry and in terms of content and representation?
Well, I mean, in terms of content, just generally, I mean, it's just expected now. It's not something that it's not something you can get away with. It's not something that it's that sort of that. I don't know. I call it's like a veil over people's eyes. It's not like willful ignorance historically. A lot of it is just because it's just not people's lived experiences. If you live in like West Sussex, the chances of you coming across a very diverse audience, or living in an environment that has a diverse group of people will be quite rare, compared to somebody who maybe lives in in Haringey or in Bradford or Leeds, where I actually grew up as a kid. So a lot of the big brands have so Nickelodeon, for instance, they have a no diversity, no commission sort of policy, where actually not only is a representation got to be on screen, but it's also got to be behind the screen as well. So not only, so if you're going to be writing black characters, then you have to have black writers. If you're writing neurodiverse characters, you have to have a neurodiverse writer. The representation on screen has to be a right mix. So all that sort of stuff's changed. So it's not something we don't really work hard at doing anymore. It's just a given, and I'm a parent with two children, 17 and 13, and I mean, I've learned so much from them as a parent growing up, and just seeing that their journey and what they consider to be acceptable, what they don't consider to be acceptable, and so I think I'd like to hope that the world is moving on, quickly. I mean, there's still lots and lots of issues to resolve, but I think, where we were 5 years ago in the children's media industry compared to where we are today is I think it's a very different place. Same with children's publishing as well. I mean, in 2017, I think it was something like 1% of all children's illustrators in the book publishing industry were a BAME. That's improved dramatically. I'm sure, if you are an illustrator who's black, you probably want to see even more change than that. But it's moved. It's definitely moved.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, I was telling you sort of earlier on about about 2015 when we saw the opportunity to create original kids audio content, because there just wasn't anything being made for children with who were, in our case, children who were visually impaired, or children who were hard of hearing. And obviously there's content that is adapted, but in terms of creating something with that audience in mind first, and actually, putting your money where your mouth is and making it really good, then there just wasn't anything like that happening at the time, or at least, as far as we could see. And it definitely does seem to be moving forward now, which is great, but still a lot to be done.
Yeah, tons to be done. Absolutely, tons to be done. But I mean, when you work with companies like the BBC, I mean, the BBC make you better as an organisation. Obviously, they're enormous and they have very deep pockets, and they're able to throw lots of people at lots of sort of issues and problems. So, but just in terms of like briefs that you get from the BBC now, in terms of what they expect to see in the response that you give them, but they've spent a lot of time thinking about, diversity, neurodiversity, this different types of disability. So any game or interactive that you deliver back to the BBC these days has to hit at least one of their diversity pillars, in terms of is it if you're partially sighted or blind, or you're deaf, or you have a physical disability of some description. Everything that you deliver has to hit at least one of those core pillars. The dream and the gold standard is to deliver something that hits all of them. That's really difficult. But so there's And what that does is that kind of feeds into the production processes here. So yes, we're doing work for the BBC, but if we're getting a job from Nickelodeon or we're getting a job from Disney or from Sesame, that all that legwork, all those hard yards that we've put in on some of the BBC content over the years, it sort of pays dividends because it's part of our DNA. It's part of our process. We're not getting clients coming to you saying, "Oh, have you, is everything you're designing, is it in line with sort of color blindness, regulations, and it's like, yeah, that's a standard. Do we use sort of dyslexic friendly fonts? Yes, we do. It's all this stuff that it's part of our secret sauce as a children's agency. I think is that there are lots of people out there that say they can do kids content, but we've been doing it for 16 years and we really know what we're doing.
Why do you think that it resonates so much with you as a business owner? It's obviously something we need more of in the industry. It's obviously a very important issue. But why? There's what we're trying to say is there's lots of studios and business owners there who it's maybe more of an afterthought for, or it's more a case of the client then has to come to them and say, right, we need you to make sure that you're representing this group and this group. But again, having chatted to you previously, it's obviously something that resonates with you a lot more than it perhaps does with other studio owners. Why is that?
I don't, Stephen. To be honest, I don't really know. I mean, when I started on the Secret Story Drawer campaign, which is an inclusion and diversity campaign that I started up with the children's media industry, I'm quite well connected, without sounding like a dickhead. I'm not. I have quite a good network, but not brilliant. So I started off with this campaign. So I'm white, if you hadn't noticed. So here I am going, I want to do something about inclusion and diversity, and then immediately stopping and going, well, actually, this is a bit worrying. Am I going to get like sort of labeled sort of white savior complex and all this? So I phoned up people like Darren Narty, who's is a commissioning editor at ITV and is black, and said, look, should I be even like considering doing something like this? And he was like, absolutely, mate. It's about allyship, and you're absolutely the right person to do it. So having someone like him kind of sort of put his sort of shoulder into me and say, you can do it. So we sort of started off with that, but I sort of approached it with a view, because to answer your question, I wanted to understand what, like I'm a white guy. I'm never going to be able to understand the lived experience of someone who's black or brown. I'm just not. But I wanted to understand everything. So I went and I interviewed and I spoke with loads and loads of people in the industry about it. And so this is a bit of a woolly sort of an analogy, but when my wife was pregnant, when she fell pregnant, up until then, I hadn't seen a pregnant person anywhere. I just was completely blind to it. So, and then the minute that Sarah told me she was pregnant, I saw women with bulges everywhere, pushchairs. It was just all of a sudden, like my lived experience had changed. A veil had been lifted, and I saw it everywhere. And the moment you recognise that actually there's a disparity in society, and representation isn't where it should be. You see it everywhere. You just start to see it everywhere. You watch University Challenge, and you're like, well, why is there like four white kids on that team and 4 white kids on that team? And and so so why is it so important? I think it's because I just see it everywhere, and it's like, well, if it's not difficult to include all of that, to whether it's neurodiversity or it's ethnic diversity or whatever. If it's something you can add in, it's something or not even add in, it's something you can start with, then I think you're in a good place. And I also have a very young team now, and that's that's just an expectation now of people that come to work for businesses. You just can't get away with that kind of old modality of thinking,
Yeah. So true.
Am I crapping on a bit much here? Sorry.
No, not at all. No, it's It's amazing how, you know, you were kind of saying there. I've got 3 kids, and my sort of middle child is neurodiverse. He was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder about a year ago or something. And
That's interesting. My Ellie, my 13-year-old, we got the diagnosis just before we went on holiday. So she is
really, right?
She's also autistic, and I mean, we thought she had been for a while, but we got we got the full report the other day, and
Right.
yeah, it's interesting because she's going through unmasking phase at the moment.
Right.
It's challenging as a parent because it's a lot of the things that she was probably avoiding or masking or of sort of, she's like, actually, I'm free to be my full authentic self now, and actually, I am gonna, you know, I'm gonna put my foot down about things that I don't like or don't want to do. So, and you know, 2 weeks in holiday, where with a newly sort of diagnosed autistic 13-year-old girl who's going through puberty and wants to own her own it was it was challenging at times. And anyone out there who's got an autistic child, including you, I hope sort of recognizes what it is I mean.
Yeah, I 100%. I mean, we're, you know, I guess, you know, you could say we were fortunate that, you know, Lewis is 3, you know, so he was, you know, he was about two and a half when he got the initial diagnosis. You know, so that's been fortunate enough that we
Well,
can.
that's really young, right?
Yeah.
How was that? Is that something you guys picked up on, or was it did it come up in?
Well, it was probably about a year and a half, you know, up until he was about a year and a half, he was developing, you know, very, very typically, you know, he was talking and, you know, just doing everything that one and a half year old should do. And then, I mean, I don't know if there's any correlation. I don't want to sort of start any conspiracies here, but it was during lockdown, our whole family got COVID. And then from that point, it was about 2-3 months where he wasn't the same child at all. And then he never returned, and you know, he stopped speaking. He started developing, you know, stimming, different types of stims. You know, and yeah, I mean, very, very clearly, you know, displaying, you know, signs and symptoms of autism. And you know, like many parents, you know, I guess we were possibly in a bit of denial and things at first, and then eventually, you know, maybe people around us, family members, maybe sort of gently sort of suggested something might be there, and then yeah, you know, it took him to see specialists, and he got his initial diagnosis, and he just had his sort of full diagnosis there last week.
Right. Okay.
So,
well, I mean, there is something that the child psychologist that worked with Ellie told us, which gave me quite a lot of comfort in terms of, so autism is something that you're born with. It's not something you develop. It's you know, it's sort of, you know, it's genetic. It's passed down through. So that, you know, we looked into it, and actually, I've got some autistic cousins on my dad's side, and Grace and Sarah's got some autism in her side. But one of the things that they said, one of the kind of hypotheses that a lot of child psychologists subscribe to with sort of neurodiversity, just generally, autism is one thing, but actually that it's been prevalent in society since the dawn of time, and actually how civilization has kind of grown and ordered itself is because you've had to have sort of neurodiverse people in any kind of social group, because otherwise, you know, we wouldn't have achieved half of what we've achieved. You wouldn't have the kind of the great thinkers or the creatives or the, you know, all of those, you know, which is I get a bit of comfort from, actually, that actually, you know, that I'm going to hang on to that one. That feels like, you know, that sounds like great if that's the case, you know. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
it is, yeah. And I kind of subscribe to a similar sort of frame of mind around that as well. It's especially when you look to the future and you think about things like AI and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like those kind of unique thinkers, people, and it's, as you were saying there, historically, people with autism they have a unique way of seeing the world, and I think that's a trait that is going to be more and more valuable to society as we go forward. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's what the reason I mentioned it was once we had a child who was diagnosed, you do see it everywhere. Whereas previously, I really was ignorant to it. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't really see it out in the world, and now I see it everywhere, and I know how common it is.
You do, but especially when you talk to parents and they're saying, "Oh, such and such is, I can't believe she's done this, or they've done this, or she's behaving like this right now," and or she's, you're thinking, you might want to like just go and have a look at some of the literature out there online, and just because that's how we just went down, just found this questionnaire that a friend had recommended to us, and we sort of went down and we were like, God, this is Ellie, like tick 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 tick, and then we gave it to her to fill in, but we removed the word autism from any of it, and we gave it to her, and she went, "Is this an autism questionnaire?" And we were like, yeah. She's like, "Yeah, I thought it was." "Well, I am." And I'm like, "Right, okay, cool. Well, we don't know that, So actually, her reaction when we told her that like she'd been diagnosed as officially autistic, she went, "Yes," like that. So she really, she was really pleased about it, because I think it all just gave her, not closure, but it kind of gave her like a, right, that's what this is. Actually, I can authentically say now at school, I've got autism, and that's why I behave the way I do at times.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is interesting. It's great to see more content producers and creators kind of thinking about these things and representing these things and creating content that fits around the lives of these people and these kids. So we want to talk about your journey into original IP. And I think we should jump into that just now, because we could probably talk forever about that. So tell us about the IP that you have developed and recently had commissioned, Stan Gran.
Yeah, that one.
That one there. Yep. Yeah. So I guess the best thing to do is just kind of take us right back to the start and tell us about this journey, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast, myself included, will go through this journey, have been through this journey, will be starting this kind of journey of developing their own original content and looking to get it commissioned. And one thing that I picked up on over the years of going to CMC and Kids Screen and things like that is, if you want to go into that space, it's incredibly difficult. It takes an incredibly long time, and the chances are pretty slim. But we have a very positive case study here. So take us through that journey.
I wouldn't disagree with anything you just said. I'm not a prolific LinkedIner, but I go on LinkedIn quite a lot, and I recently posted an article about what I like to call the sort of the four Ps. Before I kind of get into the like how Stan Gran came about, but like the four Ps for me, patience is number one. You have to be really, really patient, and when I say patient, you need to have something else to be doing. You can't just I can't just be your thing. I want to get a kids' TV show made, and that's it, because you will go mad. And you'll be broke, because there's, so you need to have patience. You need to have passion for it. You really need to be passionate about the idea, because it might be 7 years, from having that idea on a beach in Cornwall to actually it becoming a thing, if ever. So you need to be really passionate about it. Otherwise, you're just, there's just no point even starting. And then I think, what's the other one I had? I can't remember the other one, but the third one is people, and you need to surround yourself with human beings that share the other P's that you know, to be patient and to be, you know, to persevere and to also have the passion, because they're the people that see you through. You know, they're the ones that kind of help you through and keep you going. Because if you don't surround yourself with people that are passionate about the project you've got, then it's very hard to sustain that. So Stan Gran itself is I would say semi-autobiographical. It's a love letter to my grandma, really. So my Nana Mason. So I remember as a young kid spending quite a lot of time with her, being out in the countryside with her. She used to throw me into blackberry bushes and into hedges and point out wildlife to me and press flowers and all of this sort of stuff. And it really, really sort of resonated with me. And then I was a dad, and I've got kids, and they spend a lot of time with my mum, their grandma. So the show's really at its core, it's an intergenerational show about the love between a young 7-year-old boy called Stan and his grandma, Gran, and the adventures that they go on. Stan is this kind of irrepressible optimist about all he wants out of life is to spot things and seek out mystery in his little town that he lives in. So it's almost like that kind of idealized 1970s childhood that I had, where it was like I was free to roam where I wanted to roam on my BMX, go and explore the things I wanted to explore, uncover the mysteries and all of that. So it's really resonated with when we pitched it. It resonated because there aren't that many shows that sort of celebrate that intergenerational relationship between grandparents and their kids. There's a few out there, but our Gran is really like when other Grans might be laying in their armchair, you know, doing the knitting or nodding off. Our Gran is out skydiving or parachuting or scuba diving or whatever. So it's trying to represent old people in a more positive light, a bit, you know, not the sort of stereotype sort of old sort of relic. I want our Gran to be really sort of vital. So that's kind of how it came about. And then we had also, I mean, my vision is to try and get kids to go outside and spend more time out in the world, exploring the mysteries that are just on their doorstep, because, you know, the planet's going to hell in a handcart. And if we don't get the next generation to fall in love with the planet that's currently got a terminal illness, then we haven't got a lot of hope. So that's kind of the vision, is to try and encourage young people and their parents to step outside their front door and go on adventures like Stan and his Gran do. So that's the big vision for it.
So take us then to the start of you've got the concept, you've got the idea. What's your first move when you have that? Did you start piecing together, you know, like a Bible, a one-page characters, or, you know, what's your first step once you kind of have that concept of that idea?
So what we did was rather unusual. So what me and Daz, the illustrator, did was we wanted to make a book that we could put under the Christmas tree. At the end of our kind of labors, we were like coming up with the idea and what the world would look like and the characters and all of that. And then I wrote a very simple story, just featuring Stan and Gran and their adventures and we did loads of concept art and we put it all in this book. We self-published it. We didn't publish it. We just had it printed ostensibly, 24 copies, and we put them under the tree. And I had that in my bag when I went to Kids Green, along with I would say sort of very loose story beats of the world with all the other characters in it. So Stan, Gran, the baddie, and then we added some other stuff in as we went. But I had that book and some artwork with me, and I just showed it around to a couple of people. I didn't pitch it. I didn't go, hey, we've got the next big, you know, and all of that stuff, because it just makes me want to throw up seeing people pitch. It's horrendous. I mean, props to anyone who can sort of pitch. I mean, there's a guy called Adam Redfern who is a writer, and he rehearsed his pitch to me, and it was amazing. It was absolutely brilliant, and it was full of energy and enthusiasm and fun and laughs. And I was like, wow, I'd buy that show tomorrow, and and I don't think he had much success at his first market pitching like that. So, I don't know what you do when it comes to sort of that. So I just showed it around a little bit, and I showed it to one person in particular, and they burst out crying at the artwork. And they was like, oh my God, this kid is so gorgeous, so delightful. Reminds me of my son. Can you send me it? So I sent it to them. And then when we got back from Kids Screen, they said, look, we want to make it into a TV show. Can we come on board as your co-production partner? And I was like, yeah, sure. I hadn't really pitched it around. I didn't go pitching it around to all the, there's this thing for anyone who doesn't know about kids IP, but I'm sure this is a familiar thing for you, Stephen. But there's this kind of, it's just almost, it's this kind of conundrum. So you go to a broadcaster. So you line up PBS, BBC, Nickelodeon, Sky, whoever it is. You line them up, and you get the meetings in. If you get the meetings in, you go on and you pitch, and your show's amazing. And they go, "This show's brilliant. Love this show. Who's your co-production partner?" Go, I haven't got one. Right. Okay. Well, look, come back when you've got a co-production partner. But yeah, we love it. We love it. Cool. You go on the other side, you decide you're going to go pitch loads of co-production partners. You're going to go pitch all these big studios, your Blue Zoos, your Aardmans, your Jellyfishes, whoever. And you go, look, check out the show. And they go, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. We love this. This is really, we could definitely see us making this. Yeah, we could do this, actually. Yeah. Who's your broadcaster? So I don't have a broadcaster. Yeah, well, come back when you've got a broadcaster. So then you're sort of stuck in this kind of hinterland where you've got co-production partners who love it, but you haven't got a broadcaster. You've got broadcasters who love it. You haven't got a co-production partner. So you have to sort of figure out how to kind of, wiggle yourself out of that hinterland, by trying to convince either a broadcaster or a co-production partner to just to take a punt, to really sort of take a punt, and Jellyfish did. And then you've got distributors as well in the middle of all that now as well, where distributors are also making their own IP as well. So it's a, and then you've got, the streamers are there now as well. And yeah, it's a real, it's like going into battle, you got to have your game face on. You really have, and you got to sort of, be quite strategic about, all of that. Yeah,
it's a complicated old business, isn't it?
It is a complicated business, but yeah. So Jellyfish came on board. They were like, "Yeah, we want to be a co-production partner," and then we started to work on the Bible again a bit more together, and then we went out sort of pitching it together. And when you've got a co-production partner with you who've got a track record of making TV, all of a sudden that kind of gives you this almost this sort of this armor where you're like, you're not all of a sudden imposter syndrome where they're looking at you going, well, you can't make a TV show, can you? You're just far too you. Who's going to make the show for you? You go, well, these guys are, well, what have they done? Well, they've made, they've done Star Wars, and they've done Dennis and Nasher, and they've done the Flugels, and they've done, okay, right. Yeah. They're a serious production company. Yeah. We've worked with them before. So that, that's what you're hoping for, is to get somebody that's sort of, somebody that broadcasters know and like and have worked with before and trust. So that actually, they might not know you. They might think you're the crazy guy. But if the crazy guys manage to convince these guys, then, that's a tick in the box.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny how we were talking earlier about how small the kids and family industry actually is, and it's
absolutely tiny. It really is tiny. You have to be, it's not, I don't think it's a place for incredibly outspoken human beings. I think if you can be outspoken if you're actually righteous, but if you're just gobbing off for the sake of it, or you've had a bad experience, I just think you just got to keep your powder dry, because there's probably somebody who's had an equally shit experience with somebody, and word just gets around, but if you're going to be one of those people that's just, has no problems just hanging shit on somebody, you get found out really quickly in this industry, and no one wants to work with you. It's why the industry's full to the brim of really nice human beings, and having worked at places like Disney, which is a lovely company to work with, but you are exposed to people that maybe aren't as warm and fluffy as the kids businesses.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
You ever go and try and ever go to a like a procurement meeting with Tesco's when they're deciding which toys they're going to take for Christmas? I mean, God, those guys are brutal. They really don't take any prisoners. And it's like, that's not a business I want to be in.
No,
really.
no.
It's just,
I know it's. I have to say, CMC every year and kids screen. It's just such a particularly. I always think CMC. There's just such a nice kind of vibe, around Sheffield. When you go there and the people in that industry, it's it's very kind of laid back and yeah, just nice to be around.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I think it's not weird. Everyone genuinely wants you to do well, I think, because the children's media industry is like this sort of ecosystem that only really survives if everyone does okay. So yes, someone might have got a commission by a broadcaster that you'd been to, and you're looking at their show and going, well, why did they take that show, not mine or whatever? But you have to remember that once your show's kind of commissioned, what that does is it kind of opens up this ecosystem. So you've now got a show that's commissioned, and now so you've got writers that are looking for work that can now get work, and illustrators and animators and art departments, and so it's this kind of it sort of opens up an opportunity for people to actively get working, and I think that's something that I'm only starting to get my head around now. Is actually I've been pitching this idea, and then all of a sudden now we've got it. Actually, there's a world of human beings that are now going to attach themselves to this project in a really beautiful way. Directors and head writers and writers and lead viz dev people and illustrators and animators and all that stuff. And to me, it's so exciting. It's so what I wrestle with day to day now is like, how do I run this place? And everybody out there in the production office, and also honor and be 100% there and committed to that, which keeps me awake at night. I think a bit just thinking about that sometimes.
Yeah, I bet it does. I mean, what's your when it comes to Stan Gran, what do you kind of see your involvement being? How involved do you imagine you would be in terms of story, script, all that kind of stuff, or is it more of a? Do you think it'll be more of a kind of showrunner role where it's just kind of overseeing all those different types of people? Or
I think somewhere in the middle. I'm exec producing, so I think you can be as hands on or as hands off as you want in that role. But obviously, because it's original, e.g., it's not based on an optioned book or anything. It's come out of my head, and it's part of it's my lived experience, and quite a lot of me or people I know are inhabit some of the characters in that show. It's not to say that writers aren't going to bring like a whole host of magic to it, but I'm definitely going to need to be around at the start. Once we get the skeleton of this thing and the bones of it and the structure of it together, but then there's a whole host of other things. I mean, the Stan Gran broadcasting. I mean, we could talk for hours about the state of terrestrial broadcasting, which we don't have time for, and where streaming is and where gaming is and where the audience is these days. But I think a lot of people now are seeing very much TV shows now as part of an overarching IP strategy. It's not, I've got the TV show done. I'm done. this is on TV. It's actually, well, it's on TV, but actually what's the Roblox play going to be? What's the digital play going to be? What's the apps play going to be? What are the games plays going to be? I think there's a guy, Evan Shapiro, talks about this. I'm probably paraphrasing him really badly, but it's and what else? That's what your consumers are now asking. It's like, and what else? Okay, so where are you? The minute Stan Gran's on air on Milkshake, and an 8-year-old goes to his laptop, or not his laptop, his iPhone, he's going to want to find Stan Gran in other places that he spends his time in, and if it's not there, they're going to want to know why. Why isn't, it's like everywhere all at once. Like, that's the strategy. And I think there just isn't the money or the budget for that kind of conversation. We used to talk about 360 a lot in the children's media industry. You probably remember that, Stephen, like what's your 360? And actually what that usually meant, and people might come after me for what I'm going to say, but for me as a digital expert, 360 to me was usually just can you give us some ideas, John, to put on a PowerPoint presentation so we can show to the broadcast that we've thought about it, but actually no one's paying for it. No one's paying for it and no one cares. That was pretty much it, not that long ago. I think that just changed, but there's no investment for it. So the 360 really is now, okay, you've got a TV show, but what is your Roblox play? What is your Fortnite play? What is your app? What is your game? What is your books, your licensing, your merchandising, all that other stuff? But like, where is all of that? And who's paying for it? Because, there is no one paying for any of the digital content for Stan Gran. It's just it's a given. It's assumed because we're the, it's our IP that, and we are going to go mad. We're going to go nuts on it. We're going to really go crazy on the digital stuff, but it'll be at our cost, but obviously we benefit from any returns that come back that way. But it's an investment decision that you have to make up front. You have to think about it. You can't just stick it on TV now and sit back and wait for, and wait for money to roll in, get season 2 and then season 3 and then set up your master toy line and all that. It's just not, I just don't think it works like that anymore.
No, that's it. And do you think that played into your advantage, when you were sort of pitching it, that, in terms of like, digital products and taking it to other places, do you think broadcasters were kind of thinking, well, Jollywise would be the place we'd go?
I honestly don't think they were thinking it. I mean, I'd like to say yeah, but I mean, we put together a 45-slide digital strategy deck on like where we would take Stan Gran and what would be the, what would we do on Alexa with Stan Gran and what would we, and all of that. But I don't think that factors heavily into the decision making that goes on when you've been given a terrestrial commission, because it's not their fault either. It's like so many people are gobbling up rights, left, right, and center. That it's the kind of the advance that we've got from Milkshake is incredibly generous, but across the piece, advances that you get now from broadcasters compared to 10 years ago they're not big. They're not big. So you have to make the shortfall up through either co-productions, partnerships, or slicing and dicing up any rights that you've got in return for investment into the show. So you have to be. I think you have to be a particular type of person to want to have a. There are lots of people I know who work in digital and streaming who will turn to me and say that the lemon's just not worth the squeeze anymore with terrestrial TV, and they may be right, but I want a TV show. I want to be on TV. I want Stan Gran to be on Milkshake. I sat in front of Milkshake 17 years ago with a 1-year-old between my legs, mum, Milkshake, and watching Pepper and all that stuff. And that's where I want my show to be. I want it to be on there and go, wow, look, how full circle my life's gone. Actually, that channel that I watched with my kids growing up has now got my show on it. Yeah, I mean, that's magic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a similar experience just last weekend. I took my kids down to my parents' house, which is about a sort of hour and a half drive from where I live, and I'm always kind of saying, "Yeah, shall I put on, Zombieville?" That's our podcast. And my oldest son's 6 now, 6.5. So he's kind of at an age now where he can finally listen to it and enjoy it, And I put it on in the car, and he's laughing at the jokes, and he's asking me, what's the such and such going to do now? And it was kind of like the first time in about 7 years of making the show where I had actually had instant feedback of, oh wow, this is actually, kids actually like this.
Yeah,
Magic.
that's your why right there, mate.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to, when you work in digital like we do mostly. I mean, I remember being on holiday a couple of weeks ago, and there was a kid at breakfast with his parents. They were a British couple, and the noise coming out of their iPad was like driving me up the wall. And then I recognized the music, and I looked over, and they were playing a JoJo and Gran Gang game that we built for CBeebies, and I instantly was like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, usually I'd be like, like giving the parent like a stern look, saying, "Come on," it's like, it's breakfast time. Can't you turn the volume down a little bit? But I was like, oh, he's playing one of our games. That's fine.
Yeah, turn it up.
So yeah, but you very rarely see that, because it's all digital. It's all out it's all ones and zeros. It's all out in the ether. It's like every now and again, you get a bit of feedback. Either like you see someone playing a game, or quite often when Ellie was a bit younger, she'd come home and say, "Oh, some kids at school have been playing your Horrible Histories game, Dad, and they say it's really good." I'm like, "Oh, great, that's good, thanks."
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm wary of your time just now, John. So I was going to kind of ask where, once it's been commissioned. So was that the point it got commissioned? Was that sort of, again, was it at Kids Screen where that happened, or?
Well, we did, yeah. I mean, there's actually at MIP, we had this, me and Natalie had this, it's kind of crazy. If you can imagine a boardroom being sort of constructed inside a conference venue. So there's no ceiling, but you can hear the hubbub going on outside you. And we were wheeled into pitch to Nickelodeon, and it was everybody from Nickelodeon round the table, like US, Australia, Middle East, that everybody, all the big wigs all sat around a table, and me and Natalie had to sort of pitch Stan Gran there. And I think that was where, obviously, Milkshake's owned by Nickelodeon. I think that's kind of where we sealed the deal, really. Or that was, I think we crossed the Rubicon and we were like, right, we're in. And then Milkshake, gave us the commission. And Milkshake, we had COVID in the middle of all this, so we were sort of commissioned subject to finance. A long time ago, we had this bit of paper saying, yeah, we want the show, we're going to commission it, subject to finance, and then finding the finance was just a nightmare. That's probably the biggest challenge that anybody out there will find, is how do you find the money? Where do you find the money? How do you go about raising that finance? Because the broadcasters will only give you a percentage, and then your co-production partner will put in some, and then you may have to put in some, and then you've got your distributor might put in some. Then you can go do some pre-sales, and you can sort of sell the show to some other broadcasters, but you have to be careful. You can't do too many pre-sales, because then if you do too many, then your distributor's like, well, we're selling the show internationally, and you sold it to a third of the territories that we'd work in. So there's not enough in it for us. So we're going to reduce our investment in it. So it's all this, it's kind of money Tetris. It's like, which is what I mean about like what you're prepared to give up, what you're not prepared to give up, which is why when streamers came along about 4 or 5 years ago with these massive checkbooks and were like, yeah, we'll fund the whole thing. And you were like, cool, yeah, but actually, for giving you all the money, we're going to take all this. Cheers. We'll have all these rights. Thank you very much. So yeah, you get your show made and it goes onto, a streaming platform. But then you're not getting anything else. You're not getting any digital game rights or publishing rights or any of those other rights because they've taken a lot. So it's an interesting journey. I think, that's why at Kids Screen, which is really funny. You talk about Kids Screen. Well, at Kids Screens, you always see these kind of like slightly crazy older people walking around with an IP idea because they've probably made their money in banking somewhere, and their granddaughters likes a bedtime story that grandpa tells, and he goes, you know what, I'm going to go to Kids Screen. I wear a really zany shirt, and I've got this really like naff idea, and I'm going to pitch it to the broadcasters because I've got loads of money, so I can almost afford to like fund it. I remember one year there was a guy pitching to a lovely lady called Helen McAleer, who's ex-Walker Books. She's a consultant in her own right now, but she's like the go-to, if you want like a really honest, frank sort of appraisal of, your chances of getting your IP away. She's someone to talk to. And we were at this table and this guy turned up with a multicolored shirt on that was like the flag of every nation on it, a waistcoat, and a little ponytail. So the alarm bell started ringing. And then he got a flute out.
Oh, no.
And he started putting his flute together. And we were like, what are you pitching, mate? And he's like, the magic, you're pitching the magic flute.
Right.
And we were like, yeah, we you don't need to play your flute. And he's like, no. And he was putting his flute. It was just, and you get lots of those kind of people at Kids Screen. Just sort of, not crazy, that's probably unfair, but let's say incredibly eccentric.
Yeah.
People who, so in amongst all those lot, and then your actual proper professionals, and then you coming along with, far to you rocking up with your IP, it's quite hard. So my bit of advice for people is to try and get yourself quite well known at Kids Screen. Put yourself about a bit, make sure people realise that you're a serious person. You're not you're not
a flip guy. Yeah.
Because, people don't have a lot of time. Broadcasters don't have a lot of time, and there's nothing worse than sitting down with a broadcaster and really wasting 15 minutes of their time where they could have been listening to a really great pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when is it going to be on screens?
The contract says April 2025, first episodes. So then is when so we start production in Feb. So we've got this luxury of having, quite a long run in to production, which means we can get writers in place. We can start to flesh out what the story beats of what the story springs might be for that first maybe 13 or 20 episodes. We can get a writer's room, sort of start to think about what that might look like. So, which is, and the reason, I don't have the Tory government to thank for anything at all. I don't want to get political, but the one thing that they have done is they've increased an uplift in animation tax credits, which I hate to say it, but without Rishi Sunak and the chance of changing that, I think that's kind of what got us over the line financially, because we had that uplift in tax animation credits that just closed the gap. That meant we were fully funded and we could go into production, which is why we're not starting until Feb, because they don't kick in until April next year. So
yeah, it's about time they recognised the value that the creative industries is actually bringing to the UK economy. So I saw that then a few weeks ago, but that is good news.
Yeah, it is great news. It is great news. They could recognise a whole heap of other stuff, but let's not get into that.
Yeah. Excellent. So, before we wrap up then, what's the kind of future plans then for Jollywise? I imagine it's kind of more of the same, really, or do you have, where do you kind of see the company going in the next 5-10 years?
It's really weird because I really love what we do, and I think it's fair to say, and if you ask any of my team, I'd fallen out of love with the company maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was very, I had a shareholder. Like a lot of shareholder stories, we had very conflicting views on the way the company should be run, or how it would work. And during lockdown, we kind of came to an agreement that that he would leave, and he left. And what that did is it gave me a sort of re-energized me a little bit. It was terrifying to get the business back because he had a lot of the levers of the business, and to get the company back, and then to actually to put my money where my mouth is, really, and actually prove and demonstrate that I can run the company effectively. And actually, I'm really loving it right now. We're doing a lot of really fun stuff. We're moving into some really, really interesting areas. Having said all of that, I'm 54, right? So, Stan Gran is kind of, was part of my sort of retirement strategy at one point, that I would have a successful digital production company that was doing really well and making good money, and paying everyone's wages and paying me a stipend. And Stan Gran would be the thing that I would sort of retire and sort of noodle with that, and whilst living in a little place in Cornwall and rowing my boat across the estuary. That's that was the dream. I don't know where that is right now. I have a really great leadership team at Jollywise, and I'm trying to grow that team, give that team more experience, make myself a little less important to the company's sort of overall well-being. Be less. It's very hard to get. It's very hard to get out of the way of yourself at times when you've got a company. So it's learning to get out of the way to allow people who are better than I am to actually sort of take the company forward. And my role, hopefully, is just to maintain that structure, and to be there when they've got, big problems that need an answer or a solution. But that's the plan, is to grow that leadership team so that they sort of take ownership of the company. And then what that looks like, I mean, does that mean an acquisition for Jollywise? Maybe. Does it mean a merge? Maybe. Does it mean we stay as we are? Maybe. Does it mean the company buys a management buyout? I don't really know what that looks like at the moment. All I know is I'm having a lot of fun, but I also know that I'm 54, and at some point, I need to get off the merry-go-round, because running a creative services business is a merry-go-round. It's a little hand to mouth. It's a little bit, you're only as good as your last gig. You're constantly looking at your pipeline for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. What money's coming in, what money's going out. All of that stuff. And I've been doing that since 2006, and it's knackering. It is knackering, and you have to get back up on the saddle on the horse every year, and go, okay, we didn't do well this financial year, but let's go again. We've never lost money in the entire time I've been running the company, but we've had years where they've not been great, and we've had years where it's been really great. So it's that's a whole other podcast, I think. Like,
Yeah.
how do you maintain that kind of passion and that running a creative services business for as long as I have. And I think it's because I love it, and I think it's because we work in kids, and we get to work on new cool stuff really regularly. That's probably why.
Well, before we let you go, John, we have a kind of closing question on this podcast that we ask everyone. And that is, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be? Now, it could be personal, it can be business, it can be both.
I think a storyteller. I think anyone who knows me well enough will know that I've probably got a story or an anecdote to fit most occasions. Some of them probably not for public consumption. Some of them are. But yeah, I'd like to be remembered as a storyteller, and probably a nice guy despite himself. I am often labelled by people as being a bit grumpy, but I'm really not grumpy. I have an absolutely huge heart. It's just I have a kind of resting asshole face, I think is and it's absolutely, I love telling stories. I love making people laugh. I just need to tell my own face that sometimes. So, but that's what I like to be remembered for.
Fantastic. Well, I think you're going the right way about it. I mean, having a show commissioned and going to be a milkshake, I think there'll be a lot of people who would dream to have that kind of success in their life. So, yeah, this has been an absolute.
Thanks.
Yeah. No problem.
It's very. I'm very difficult at putting things into perspective. There's always feels like life's always felt like there's a bend in the road for me, and like it's always like what's around the corner, and quite often it's sort of I forget to sort of sit on the bench and just have a look at the bend and go, well, let's have a look at where I've come from. I'm always like looking at what's around the corner and actually, So when people when you say things like that, it sort of stops me in my track a little bit and go, yeah, well, actually, yeah, I've done all right, haven't I? I'm doing all right, and I've done all right.
Yeah,
I need to get off a break at times.
I think so. I think as creative people, we quite often don't stop to recognize what we've achieved because we're always thinking about what's next, what can I do? Here's an idea, I think it's a lot of people probably think that same way of if I just stop for a minute and look at what you have achieved. So
I think you stop for a minute and you're going to atrophy, and it's all going to go away. Just sort of like run out of your hands like sand. It's like, oh, creative juice is gone.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Well,
right. Well, look, Stephen, really nice to talk to you. Are you going to stop recording in a minute, and then we'll questions off camera?
Absolutely, yeah. So thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, John. Thanks again.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Really, I've really enjoyed it. I didn't know what I was. I hadn't prepared anything.
What you were in for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.